record this. There we go. So welcome. Hello, hello. We are going to get started here in just a moment. I see Theodora is with us on the webinar. Hi, Theodora. So good to have you with us. If you're just joining us, I would love to know who you are and where you're from. And we will get rolling with this pretty darn quick right away here. All right. Okay, so here we go. I do want to just take a moment and introduce myself because I've been hanging out on Instagram and on Facebook a lot, but some of you might be new to me. My name is Judith Cobb. I am a master herbalist, registered holistic nutritionist, and an NNCP as well, and a certified constitutional iridologist, as well as a certified constitutional iridology instructor. I have been in the wellness industry as a wellness coach for 40 years. I started in 1980, and I've seen a lot of changes in the industry. I've seen a lot of changes as well, even in iridology, because when I started, I practiced what a lot of people would know now as old school or Jensenian. I think it's the same style that Dr. Morse teaches. I did that for about 10 years, and it got to where I was very dissatisfied. What I had learned was not the same as what I was experiencing as a health practitioner. I was taught that if we did cleanses and special diets with people, we would see changes in the iris. And in 10 years, I didn't see that. I had a camera, I was taking photos, and we would do before and after photos on cleanses, and there'd be not a speck of change. Things would be exactly the same, and we would do repeat cleanses, and we would do special diets, and I just kept getting more and more frustrated. And that was when I was blessed to be able to learn constitutional iridology with one of the two people who really started to teach constitutional iridology way back in the 80s. So it was the early 1990s when I found them, and I have been so grateful for that ever since. And I won't tell you the long story of how we actually connected, but I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that there are opportunities placed in our pathway, and it's up to us to decide to grab them or not. So let's get going here. Let's look at an eyeball. Okay, so here we have an eyeball. This is the left eye of a female who is in her early 30s. And beautiful iris, by the way, beautiful iris. I've learned with constitutional iridology to appreciate eyes for the artwork they are. They are so beautiful, and they teach us so much about the person in so many ways. Well, this wonderful woman had been trying with her husband to conceive for a full year. And they'd really been focusing really intently on it for about 5 months before she came to me. She was frustrated, things weren't working. She couldn't figure out why this was. She brought in her medical labs for me, and they all looked fine. But there was a couple of things that were not fine that caught my interest right away. Number one, she said that her menstrual flow was so light that she didn't even need a panty liner. It would be a little bit of smearing. Now, we know that optimally for a fertilized egg or an embryo to implant in the uterine lining, we need at least a lining 7 millimeters thick. And ideally, we would like it to be at least 9 millimeters thick. 7 is doable, 9 is optimal. And you don't have just a smear for menstrual flow if you've got a 7 millimeter thick endometrial lining. And we've got Murad joining us on Instagram. Hi, Murad. Glad you're with us. I hope I said your name right. And so the other thing that came back was she brought in her husband's sperm analysis, and his sperm showed that there were some deficiencies. Now, some men are really good with that kind of information, and they say, what do I need to do to make it better? Her husband was not quite that way. We gave him the supplements. He was totally not impressed. He just simply wanted it to be her problem. And he kept saying, it'll happen when it happens. Well, she was smart enough to know that with his sperm analysis results and with whatever it was that was going on with her, this wasn't going to just happen on its own. So because he was only willing to take a few supplements, he wasn't really willing to do a full program for male fertility. We kind of could only work with her, not kind of, we could only work with her. So that's what we did. And she was an amazing client to work with on this. She used ovulation predictor kits that showed that she had her luteinizing hormone surge on about day 12 or 13. And that's good because that means that her body was saying the hormones are right to ovulate. So we knew she was ovulating. But again, she had a really almost non-existent menstrual flow. She also had almost no ovulation mucus, in spite of the lab tests saying that things were fine, in spite of the ovulation predictor kit saying things were fine. She had almost no ovulation mucus. And that is, so we've got two things going on here. When the endometrium is not thick enough, that suggests that there may not be enough estrogen happening. When we don't have enough or any really ovulation mucus, it suggests that we don't have progesterone in the right amount. And so she kept using these kits and to see if she was ovulating or not. We actually got her to do her basal metabolic temperature, and it came back as all of her temps were low. So with basal metabolic temperature, we expect to see the follicular phase, or the first part of the menstrual cycle, temperatures being low compared to the luteal phase, or the phase after ovulation, which should be comparatively higher. And we know the temperature range that those should fall in. All of her temps, while she had a low side and a high side, all of her temps were low, which then suggests that there's either a liver imbalance or a thyroid imbalance. All right. And those may or may not be inherent. They may or may not be what she is. They may be that she's created that for herself. So as we look at her iris here, this is her left iris, what we see is that it's a lymphatic iris, which means it's basically blue. We've got fiber very visible, and that makes me want to ask about her diet, because we know that with the lymphatic eye type, she is more prone to being too acidic. And so I needed to know what was her diet. Did she have, was it clean? Was it good? Was it crappy? Was it lousy foods? Well, her diet was really clean, pretty much all organic, not quite vegan, but almost. And so her diet was really pretty good. She's polyglandular. So when we're talking about polyglandular, she's got several large lacunae attached to the collarette. So that suggested that I needed to ask her questions about her blood sugar balance. And we've got people joining us on Instagram. That's great. We've got people joining us on the webinar. That is wonderful. So I needed to ask about her blood sugar balance especially. And what we found was that her blood sugars, she's very lean. She's a very lean woman. She's very active. But I felt like in her answers that her blood sugars were dipping a little bit periodically in the day. As we assessed her diet from top to bottom, breakfast to bed, we discovered that she probably had two things that weren't quite right to help her endocrine system work properly. They were that she probably wasn't getting enough protein, because protein stabilizes the blood sugars, and she probably wasn't getting enough fat. So we needed to get her using more nuts and seeds, more nut butters, some lentils, some legumes, more avocado, things like that to bring up her fat levels, because we know we need good fats in the diet to prime the hormone pump. As I was looking at her eyes, I also noticed that she has in here what we would call oat straw yellow. And that oat straw yellow, that dirty yellow color, suggests that we probably need to ask about her kidney function and her acid levels again. Interesting, because she also has a closed lacuna down here in the kidney zone. Now, she's never had a kidney problem. She's not prone to kidney infections. So that is absolutely fabulous. But remember, the kidneys are what clear the acid out of the body. And so we needed to make sure that she was using only foods and that she was digesting them well enough that she wasn't going to create an excess amount of acid and create kidney stress. Then we noticed that, and this might be hard for you to see on Instagram, there were some tiny little brown pigments. They haven't gone away and they won't. Some tiny little brown pigments in her eyes. Very, very faint, rusty brown pigments. And that meant that I needed to ask questions about her liver, because brown pigment implies liver. When I asked her about that, and most people haven't got a clue what their liver does, right? So I had to ask her if there was a metallic taste in her mouth. Did she have any issues with digesting fats? Do they feel yucky when she's trying to digest them? Does she ever feel toxic? Some people will describe it as just feeling toxic. So we went that direction, but that clued me into some other things that we probably were going to need to work with. We saw that she has these tophi in her eyes, this stuff at the outer edge, this clouding at the outer edge. And that suggested that I needed to ask about her activity levels and her immune system. And was she ever prone to things like tonsillitis or adenoid issues, particularly as a child? Did she ever have swollen lymph glands? Noticed also that she has a really dark frame around the outer edge of her eye. So I needed to ask about her skin. Now remember, the skin functions as our third kidney. And that means our skin is getting rid of the acid that our kidneys have not been able to get rid of. So I had to ask her again, how's your skin? Is it dry, flaky, itchy? Are you prone to eczema or psoriasis or acne or rashes? And we were able to ascertain that no, she wasn't prone to any of those things, and her skin was doing all right. And a lot of that is because, again, she has an active lifestyle. She likes to go hiking in the mountains every weekend. And she doesn't bathe more than she needs to. Now that might sound crazy, but here's the lowdown. You need the oils that your skin produces. Those oils that your skin produces are critical to several things. Not just keeping your skin nice and soft, but you need those oils to help make your vitamin D. You need those oils to help your immune system because those oils are antiseptic. And so where I live, it's cold and in the wintertime, and that means it's very dry. We've been clinically, yeah, right, climatologically, there's a good word for you, proven to be drier than the Sahara Desert here. People that come from moist areas, like from the coastal areas that come here, when they get off the airplane, they say they instantly feel like their skin is going to crack and fall off. And so it's important that when people in this climate have this kind of a dark band at the edge of their eye, that they not shower every day or bathe every day, that they actually just let those oils build up in their skin a little bit. We looked then at the center part of her eye, everything that's inside this ring that comes around here. This is called the nutritive zone. And in here, and I'm just going to move my phone a little bit closer for our friends that are with us on Instagram, in the hopes that they can see this more clearly. Oh yeah, I think you've got this good. You can see that there's this gray edge right here. This is what we call a gray border. And then if you look even beyond that, it looks like the gray edge has a zigzag edge to it on that pupil, on the iris side. That's what we call comb teeth. So what does this suggest? This suggests that she may not have the strongest stomach lining. She may not have the best ability to digest proteins. So I asked her about that because we were needing to increase her proteins. So the questions are, how do you feel if you eat animal protein especially? Do you feel heavy? Does it sit in your stomach and make you need to burp? Then do you pass gas later on that is really, really foul? Those are all indications that the proteins are not digesting very well. And if the proteins aren't digesting, then nothing else is going to happen properly in the process of what we want to do. So as we look at all of that, can you see how important it is to have access to the client to gather more information as the assessment continues? This is so, so important. And this is one of the things that kind of gets under my skin. You know, when we see these iris analyses done on Facebook and people slam up their photos that are really badly done with a smartphone, and someone online is doing an iris assessment and they're just spewing out what every little mark is. Well, I'm going to tell you that every little mark is actually not important. What is important is how the marks work together. And in order to understand all of that, you have to be able to have a conversation with the client. So as I took this client's photos, I popped them up on my computer screen. And as we're looking at the photos, I'm asking her questions because these make me wonder about her endocrine system, about her thyroid, her pancreas, adrenals primarily, but because she's struggling with fertility, her ovaries as well, her pancreas. I mean, we've got all of the endocrine system being affected when we have these markings in here, right? So I'm not going to focus on each one individually. I want to take that step back and get the big picture, because we aren't just a pancreas that's out of balance. We aren't just a thyroid that's out of balance. If the thyroid's out of balance, there are reasons for it: physiological, chemical reasons, and emotional reasons. And we can't determine those without talking to the client. So this is so important that we have that conversation, so very important. When we look at the collarette, which is this ring that comes around here, we see that it's a little irregular. We've got places where it juts out, places where it comes in, a little bit star shapes, just a little bit. This isn't a really aggressive looking collarette. It's not a collarette where we're going, oh my goodness, man, she's really got gut issues, bowel issues particularly. But it's slightly irregular. So we've got some areas that are ballooned out a little bit physically in her body for her intestines and small and large intestines. So depending on which part of the collarette we're looking at will tell us which part of the intestinal tract is inherently programmed to have those problems, right? So I asked her about her bowel transit time. Now, most people think that if they're having a bowel movement, they've got good bowel transit time. And and that's not necessarily true, right? Just because you have a bowel movement every morning at 7 a.m. doesn't mean you're having it in a timely fashion. From the time we eat the food till the time we get rid of it should be no more than 24 hours. And we'd like to see it be 18 to 24 hours. So I had her do what we call the corn test. This is the only time I ever tell my clients to not chew their food. I had her get some whole kernel corn and take a few mouthfuls of that, and had her mark down when did she eat it, when was the first time she saw corn in her bowel movement, and when was the last time she saw it in her bowel movement. And it was taking her 24 to 42 hours to actually get rid of all of the corn. Now that's a problem. Not that she was not getting rid of the corn. That's a little part of the problem. That's just the marker that tells us she's got the problem. The problem is that when someone holds on to fecal material in their digestive tract, in their small or large intestine for more than 24 hours, they have now gone beyond the point where they are absorbing just minerals and fluid. They are now reabsorbing stuff that they were meant to get rid of. Now, I want you to think about this in the scope of someone who's struggling to get pregnant. Think about where the large intestine in particular sits. Think about where the ovaries sit. Think about where the uterus sits. So if we've got garbage, toxic waste products being absorbed from that large intestine, from the colon, into the blood and the lymphatic that is around that, how much of that is then going to be shared with the ovaries and the fallopian tubes even, and the uterus? Like all of it. And so we needed to be concerned that her bowel transit time was a little bit slow as well. This is her right iris, and I'm just going to pull back a little bit for our friends on Instagram. There we go. This is our right iris. And Instagram friends, I apologize for that big light blob that you see up here, that's a reflection of my room lights. And if I don't have the room lights on, we tend to get a very pixelated image overall. So I apologize for that. Trust me when I say we aren't even concerned about anything up there in this discussion. So again, we've got the oat straw yellow, which again makes us want to be wondering about her body's ability to offload acid. We see a bit of that dark band at the edge that we call a scurf rim, which again talks about the body's ability to offload acid through the skin. We see again that in the nutritive zone, we have this very similar gray border and the comb teeth to what we saw in the left iris. So we know then that we are really on track and really on point with asking about protein digestion. Now, I suspected again from the various pigments and pigment placements that I saw in her eyes that she might have had the MTHFR defect. Is that something you're familiar with? If you're not familiar with MTHFR, give me a wave or give me a raised hand or let me know in the comments because I'll explain it a little bit. We've got a couple who are not familiar with this. All right, so the MTHFR defect is methyl tetrahydrofolate defect. And right on, so we're going to explain this. We've got Instagram friends that are not familiar with it too. MTHFR means that the person has a genetic glitch that affects actually to some extent half of all the population of the world. And depending on your ethnicity, you'll be on the higher end of that half or on the lower end of that half. And so these are people who are missing an enzyme in their liver to take B vitamins, particularly the folic acid and the B12, and add a methyl group to it. What does that mean? You have to have your folic acid in the folate form, which is the methylated form, and you have to have B12 in the methylated form in order for you to actually use them. Now, what we see is a very, very high correlation of women who have the MTHFR defect to them also having polycystic ovarian syndrome. Now, this client had never been diagnosed with PCOS. However, the fact that she is polyglandular subtype, we even see those 3 large lacunae attached to the collarette hair, and the fact that she had the right pigment and pigment configuration made me think that she had MTHFR defect and that she actually maybe even had PCOS, but because she was very nutrition conscious and very physical activity conscious, she was actually controlling the PCOS. Okay, so she actually did, I'm gonna jump the gun a little bit here. She did get pregnant, yes, while we were working together. And she, halfway through the pregnancy, she did the 23andMe. She's really prone to anxiety. She's got some marks in her eyes that suggest she burns through her B vitamins way too fast. And so the whole time we worked together, I was very aware that her anxiety levels were always high. She was always waiting for the next bomb to go off somewhere, right? And so she did the 23andMe halfway through her pregnancy, and she sent me an email that was just electric. I could feel the anxiety vibrating off this email because the 23andMe said she had the MTHFR defect. And I hadn't broached that subject with her at all. I had just suggested from the get-go that we wanted to use methylated Bs because they are better for her, and I didn't tell her why. But she was vibrating. I have the MTHFR defect. What does that mean? My baby. What about my baby? Oh my goodness, my baby. Is my baby going to be fine? Is my baby healthy? Is there going to be a problem? And I was able to respond to her very calmly and saying, you know what? Nothing to worry about. I've had your back since the very first time we met. I suspected that might be the case from things that I saw in your eyes. And I have been giving you the right kind of B vitamins to make sure that the MTHFR defect wasn't going to affect us. And I said, and I suspect that largely because of the kind of vitamins and minerals and supplements we are working with you, that we've done a really good job of controlling the MTHFR defect and getting your liver completely online so that you could get pregnant and have a healthy pregnancy. And she was really, really grateful for that. All right, so I want to show you I want you to do a contrast here. Bump back one. Notice this picture. And for those of you on Instagram, I'm going to move it closer. Oh, too close. I probably can't get as close as I'd like to get without getting, there we go. That's pretty good. Look at the color on this side. Now look at the fact that we've got two focus lights here. That means that this is a very brightly illuminated photo. Notice what changes when we turn one of the lights off. Okay, so what I'm really wanting you to look for, and I'm going to move closer for Instagram, is can you see any little lines down here on Instagram? You can see them a little bit. You can see them a little bit. Oh, now we have that room light in the way. A little bit up here as well. When we turn off one light, do you see how much more obvious these become? So these lines, again, are what made me ask her initially in her consultation, how do you handle stress? And she admitted she runs high anxiety. She works in human resources where she's hiring and firing and working with their employees when they have problems. And so she's always totally heightened with that. And what we found is that because we could see that and because of all the things that combined in her eyes, I was able to then assess and make that assumption that she likely had the MTHFR defect. Then when we gave her those vitamins, she did start calming down and was able to handle stress a little bit better. But we also suggested that this isn't just a B vitamin issue. This is where she needs to meditate. She needs to go hiking. She loves hiking. She loves the mountains. She likes dancing. She likes singing. And I really underscored that for her, especially when she was pregnant. Hi, Kate Meseros. I hope I said your last name right. It's good to see you on Instagram. And I suggested that what she should be doing is singing to her baby, dancing with her baby, even though she was pregnant, reading children's stories to her baby, finding anything that was joyous that she could use with her baby, okay? And that would help her to deflate the anxiety that she is so prone to. So again, here is the right sclera, or the right iris, but when we look at the right sclera, we see various markings that suggest the thyroid might also be trying to cause problems. And as I mentioned earlier, her basal temperatures were always a little on the low side and a little bit unstable. So she did have that really clear follicular phase. She had the really clear luteal phase. We added a few supplements to her program for her thyroid specifically. The other thing we needed to note is that in normal lighting, her pupils tended to be somewhat large. And that, with camera lighting, they always go down because the light is really bright. It's LED, it's right up there, and it just always makes the pupils shrink. So I always like to look at their eyes just in normal room lighting, and her pupils are quite large in normal room lighting, which suggests that she functions primarily in the sympathetic nervous system. So she's sympathetic dominant, which means she's more prone to anxiety, more prone to depression, more prone to, and I mean no disrespect, but being a bit of a drama queen, where every little thing is not a little thing. Every little thing is a massive life-changing thing. So that meant we needed to support her adrenals, and that's harder to do in pregnancy because so many times the things that we would use for adrenals are not indicated for use in pregnancy. After we had worked together for about 4 months and before she got pregnant, her menstrual periods changed and she actually needed to use a pad for her menstrual flow. We were so excited about that. You know, a lot of women go, I want less flow. We wanted more flow with her, and we started to get it. We also found that with the work we were doing, we were balancing her out enough that she was seeing ovulation or mid-cycle mucus for the first time. Now, mid-cycle mucus, we gauge fertility by the mid-cycle mucus, by how much stretch it has. When the mucus stretches a full 4 inches, so we literally get the fingers, have the woman get her fingers into it and stretch it. When she's got 4 inches of stretch, that is absolutely fertile. Call the hubby and say, we're doing lunch today, right? Kind of thing. We never got her to 4.5. We know that 2.5 is probably fertile. 4 is very fertile. She got to 2.5. And that we kept increasing that a little bit and a little bit. So at 4 months, she was at 2.5 from having nothing 4 months previous. So this was great. 7 months after we started working together, she had a positive pregnancy test, and her baby ended up being breech, and she didn't want to try to deliver a breech baby, and her doctor was not experienced with breech. So they ended up with a cesarean section. So as we look at this, how did having the eyes help us understand what we needed to do with her? Well, it really helped us to see that we were going to have to work with her endocrine system, that she was likely going to be the MTHFR, and that we needed to really work with the anxiety. Anxiety is not a good thing to have when you're working with a pregnancy. We know that babies and developing babies are very sensitive to the mom's emotions. And we knew we were going to have to support her digestion and probably her liver as well. Asking her the questions that we did helped us to clarify where we actually needed to focus the attention. We can see all the marks we want in an iris, but we have to understand what's the client's lifestyle doing right now. What is her diet? What is her activity level? What healthful practices does she have? Because as we saw, while her eyes suggest major endocrine imbalances, that probably meant she was technically polycystic ovarian syndrome, or could have been, she had the right diet in place to control that. So it would be totally redundant for me to actually go in and say, I think you have PCOS. I can't diagnose and prescribe. I'm not a medical doctor, but I suspect there might be PCOS here. And so we need to do this. She was already on track with that kind of stuff. So the best approach is not to give this woman one more thing to worry about, because she would. The best approach for her is to say, you are doing so much that's right. Let's build on that. Does that make sense? That the eyes also help us to understand the person's emotional patterns, and that allows us then to tailor how we approach what we see and what we ask based on their emotional needs and sensitivities. I didn't need to analyze every marker. I didn't need to map this and 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 this. What I needed to do was to take that physical step back, look at the whole iris and see the context of her constitution and how she's put together, to look at the big picture. And that is what constitutional iridology is all about. It's not about dissecting into teeny weeny little parts, because each teeny weeny little part in and of itself is not significant. What is significant is how they work together. And Sebastian has commented on the webinar, I like your approach a lot. Thank you, Sebastian. This is why I left the other style of iridology and came to this style 30 years ago, because this one just makes sense. It just makes sense. So that's how we do iris assessments using constitutional iridology. I'm just going to put a little teeny plug in here for the course that's coming up, and registration isn't even open, so I'm not selling anything. Registration won't be open until mid-March. And so what we've got is the next go round of Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology starts April 16th or April 17th. And the reason I'm running 2 groups through this time is I have had a lot of interest from Australia. And the times that work for me to teach, usually middle day, for example, doesn't work in Australia. It's 3 a.m. there. Not a good time for class. So we're doing another group through on the Fridays, 4 p.m., which puts us to the next morning, puts us to Saturday morning. So I'm hoping that works well for my Australian friends. So again, registration isn't open yet, but if you'd like to know when registration opens, and if you'd like more details, I'm going to encourage you to go to iridology.education. There is an opt-in there for my iridology map, the dynamic iridology map. And when you opt in for that, it will add you to my mail list. Alternately, you can private message me your email address, and I will make sure you get added to the list. I'll personally take care of that for you. In the scope of this 40-hour course, so it's 2 hours a week for 20 weeks, I teach the holistic constitutional iridology, and I teach it in a way that you will be able to do your assessments just like you've seen me do right now. We integrate what you know about herbs, what you know about nutrition, what you know about aromatherapy, what you know about flower essences, whatever other skills you are bringing with you, I teach you how to integrate those into your iris assessment. It makes it so much more powerful than just teaching you to identify markers, right? We actually practice how to do a proper assessment. What questions do you ask? What kinds of suggestions would you consider making? And then how would you distill that down and create an actual program that your clients can stick with? And Kate, she says, I love this. I have issues figuring out the Zoom app. It was great to finally catch a session of yours. Yes. Kate, if you want to take the class, if you decide you want to join with us here, I will actually, and this is open to anyone who registers for the course. If you are new to Zoom and you don't know how to use it, I will set up a little tutorial group where we practice you through logging on and getting into the program, because it's important that my students have access. The equipment that we use to view an iris as a professional is also very important, and we talk about that a lot in the course. But I want you not to get scared by that, because where should you start? A lighted magnifier. You know, for $19.95 or something like that, you too can have one of those, right? And that's where we all start. And so as we look at this, it's important to know that we got to start at the beginning, and we're going to build on that in the program. And you know, when you're on my email list, then you will be invited to join me when we actually launch, the registration. And that's also where I will walk you through everything that's included in the program, what the tuition is, all of the support and all of the mentoring you get that goes way beyond the 40 hours of in-class time. Again, registration isn't open yet, but if you opt in for the iris map, which you can do right here at iridology.education, you'll get on my list, or just like I said, private message me your email address. And if you're on the webinar with me, you can actually send me a message right now, just in the two where you're sending messages. You can choose to send it just to me and not to all of the panelists, or send it to the panelists rather, not to the attendees. And then I will get it privately and nobody else will see it. All right, so with that, I just wanted to throw it out there. Any questions? Because I would love to make sure that what we've done today works for you and that it made sense. Anything at all that I can help you with? All right. It looks like we're golden. Thank you so much for being with me today. As you can tell, I love teaching. It is the fun part of my day. Well, client work is too. I'm just so glad you were with me. And I look forward to seeing you in future sessions. We'll be doing another Facebook Live, Instagram Live, and webinar on Tuesday at 11 a.m. And we'll make sure you get the information for that. Take good care and have a marvelous weekend. Bye for now.